My name is Lisa, and I'm 37 years old. I live with my husband Larry. We both work for the company that Larry's dad started. Even though his dad retired, he turned a small construction business into a huge company making $300 billion a year. He bought other construction companies and was known for being tough but skilled in business. Larry grew up privileged and gentle. I worry he's too soft for the tough business world, despite being chosen to lead the company after his dad. Recently, I've started to doubt if Larry is right for the job or even for me as a husband. He's admitted he doesn't think he's cut out to be CEO and might just be a figurehead. He doesn't seem interested in taking charge seriously. We've been married for 10 years and lately I'm frustrated with his lack of ambition. Unlike Larry, I see myself as someone who makes decisions easily. My father-in-law, when he was active in the company, noticed this about me and gave me different tasks to handle. Before I married Larry, I worked at a bank, where I learned to manage finances and always focus on the numbers. After getting married, I planned to stay home full-time, but my father-in-law asked me to join the construction company instead. Once I started working there, my father-in-law began inviting me to important board meetings and valued my opinions on how things should be managed. At first, some board members were unsure about having the founder's daughter-in-law involved in these meetings. However, as I consistently offered valuable insights, they began to respect my input. Larry, who was also on the board, rarely attended these meetings, which everyone, including my father-in-law, seemed to accept as normal. One day, when I returned home from a meeting, I found Larry casually watching TV. "Why didn't you attend today's meeting?" I asked, feeling frustrated. "You're an important member, you should take it seriously." He didn't seem guilty at all when he replied, "Even if I go, I don't really understand what they're talking about. Besides, the board prefers you, so it's not a problem, right?" His response made me wonder if he was bothered by my role in the meetings. Despite Larry's comments, my father-in-law continued to mentor me in business operations, hinting that I might succeed him. I began to enjoy the challenges of management and worked hard to meet my father-in-law's expectations. After about 3 years, my father-in-law retired completely. When big decisions arose, the board members started consulting me, sidelining Larry. I had hoped this would motivate Larry to become more involved, but instead he grew even more detached. He'd show up at the office in the morning but disappear by noon, spending the rest of the day at home. When we were together at home, he avoided discussing work altogether, showing little interest in the company's affairs. As my responsibilities at the company grew after my father-in-law retired, I found myself taking on tasks that were similar to those of a CEO. With our company being large and employing many people, I felt a strong commitment to increasing our sales and profits for the sake of our employees. Thanks to the hard work of our staff, our sales started to rise. I found the challenges of running the company increasingly fascinating and became deeply involved in my work. Meanwhile, my husband Larry seemed to be losing interest in his own job, and he began showing up at the office less frequently. Our conversations at home dwindled, and our relationship started to feel strained. "When I came home today, I ran into your sister Nancy and we had lunch together," Larry said. Nancy, who is 3 years older than me, had recently gone through a divorce due to her infidelity, which caused a big uproar when her angry husband confronted our parents at their home. Since I was busy with work, Larry, who has a gentle and calming personality, went in my place to calm down Nancy's husband. He managed to convince him to leave peacefully. Later, Nancy told me, "Your husband is really something. He handled my husband's anger so well." She was impressed by Larry's ability to diffuse the situation with his calm demeanor. After her divorce, Nancy paid alimony and seemed to see Larry in a new light. Before this incident, she may have viewed him as a rich, pampered man who lacked decisiveness. But now she saw him as a respectable business owner. Being single again, Nancy might have started to see Larry as an attractive catch, especially since she has always been drawn to wealthy men. However, I was focused on my work and couldn't imagine such thoughts. Nancy didn't realize that Larry is just a figurehead at the company and doesn't actually manage it. Nancy's ex-husband was an impressive employee at a foreign company who once boasted to me at their wedding, saying, "I'm a successful guy with a high salary, and I'm handsome too. You must be jealous." He was indeed charming, intelligent, and carried himself with style. I couldn't fathom why Nancy would cheat on such a remarkable husband. 5 months after Larry mentioned having lunch with Nancy, I came home to find him unusually serious. "Lisa, we need to talk," he said. It was the first time he'd ever said those words, and I sensed something serious was coming. Anxious, I waited for him to continue. "Actually, Nancy is pregnant with my child, and I want a divorce," he confessed. I was shocked by both the request for divorce and the news of Nancy's pregnancy. Speechless, I listened as Larry added, "Nancy wants to come over on our next day off to discuss this, so I need your support," he said. I was stunned. "So you want to marry my sister?" I asked incredulously. With a troubled expression, Larry replied, "I don't necessarily want to marry her, but if she's having my baby, I feel like I have no choice." His typical indecisiveness frustrated me, and I responded, Well, if she's carrying your child, we'll have to deal with it. Let's discuss this when she comes over. It seemed like Larry and I couldn't make decisions together, so I decided to talk directly with my sister to sort things out. Despite already deciding on divorce, I felt the need to consult my father-in-law about the company's situation. Being the daughter-in-law of the founder, I was deeply involved in running the business, but divorce would mean losing that connection. The next day, I visited my in-law's house and told my father-in-law everything Larry had said. My mother-in-law, delighted at the news of her son having a child, fell silent under my father-in-law's stern gaze. It seemed she cared more about her grandchild than the company's management. After pondering for a while, my father-in-law smiled and said, "Lisa, I want you to continue managing the company as you have been. Larry can do as he pleases. I'll handle the rest." It was clear that my father-in-law valued the company's management over his son or grandchild. Even though he was retired as the founder, his influence was significant, holding most of the company's shares, ensuring no executive could oppose him. I was becoming more invested in my work and reluctant to step away from it. With my work situation settled, it was time to talk about the future with my sister. On my day off, she came over with a big smile and said, "Lisa, it's a shame you couldn't have a baby. I'll give you a good amount of money for consolation. Please leave this house right away." She spoke with a hint of triumph. My husband sat silently through our conversation, despite being the cause of the issue. I was shocked by his indifferent demeanor and replied, "Divorce is fine, but we also need to discuss alimony and property division with a lawyer to settle things properly." Turning to my sister, I added sarcastically, "I never imagined you'd fall for someone like Larry." She glared at me briefly but quickly composed herself. "I've come to realize that it's not about looks with men, it's about what's inside," she said. It struck me as amusing to hear her speak so confidently about understanding my husband's true nature. Holding back my amusement, I said, "That's wonderful. I hope you'll be happy together from now on." The inner self my sister referred to might have been money. She seemed to believe my husband was the president of my father-in-law's company, though she clearly hadn't heard it from him directly. After our discussion, my sister announced she would move in and had a moving company ready. Anticipating her quick decisions, I had already arranged for a new apartment and only took essentials with me. I hired a lawyer to prepare documents for property division and alimony. The next day, after moving my belongings, negotiations began with my husband and sister, led by my lawyer. My husband remained silent with an indifferent expression, while my sister did all the talking. "As I mentioned earlier, I'm willing to pay whatever alimony you decide on. Please take your time to decide," my sister declared. Upon hearing this, my lawyer decided to pursue alimony from both my husband and sister. Knowing my sister was already making alimony payments to her ex-husband, the lawyer had warned it might be challenging to claim more from her. However, since she offered to pay whatever I wanted, we proceeded with the claim. When discussing the division of property, my sister confidently stated, "This mansion originally belongs to Larry's family, so it shouldn't be included in the property division, right?" The lawyer calmly replied, "This building and the land are owned by the company, so that decision rests with the company." To my surprise, even my husband seemed to believe the house belonged to his father. "Oh really? I thought this house was Dad's," he remarked casually. This revelation caught my sister off guard, prompting her to challenge the lawyer. "Wait, so does that mean I can't live in this house?" my sister asked. The lawyer replied in a matter-of-fact tone, "Since it's owned by the company, you can stay if the company allows it." Relieved, my sister responded, "Oh, you should have said that earlier. It's fine as long as Larry, the president, lives here." The lawyer looked momentarily surprised, then burst out laughing. "What are you talking about? Lisa is the president, not Larry." Realizing my sister had planned to move in with my husband without knowing this fact, I couldn't help but laugh. She turned to Larry in shock and exclaimed, "Larry, you're not the president?" I intervened on behalf of my husband, who looked troubled, and clarified to my sister, "Larry holds the title of advisor without any executive authority. I, on the other hand, serve as both an executive director and president. When our father-in-law, the founder, retired, he appointed me to these roles. The other executives supported this decision without opposition. As for Larry, he receives an executive salary due to his father's arrangement, but it's more symbolic than practical since he doesn't perform executive duties. In fact, his salary is less than what a regular employee would earn, and I cover all our living expenses. He's indifferent to our household finances and was unaware that our home, though company-owned, was subject to rent set by my responsible father-in-law. I saw it as a standard rental agreement. While I considered this normal, the lawyer, still chuckling, asked me, "Can we continue renting this house to Larry?" My sister reacted strongly to the mention of rent from the lawyer. "Rent? Are you serious? This is company property. It should be free," she exclaimed. The lawyer, still amused, presented the rent amount, which shocked both my sister and her husband, Larry, who seemed unaware of this expense until now. "Wow, that's a hefty rent. I can't afford that with my salary, Larry admitted. His executive compensation wouldn't cover such high rent, leaving little for their living expenses. Throughout our 6 years of marriage, Larry's modest executive salary had been fully spent, just as my salary had been drained by our high living costs. With few assets left, dividing our savings was the only practical solution. After the lawyer left, my sister realized the mansion she had hoped to live in was actually rented, leaving her visibly disappointed. Meanwhile, Larry appeared unfazed, maintaining his usual grin. I suggested, "Why don't you move back to your parents' house? Your mother was thrilled about the pregnancy news." Larry agreed, but inside I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony of arranging this for my soon-to-be ex-husband. I started to worry about whether this unreliable man could handle fatherhood, but quickly decided it was no longer my concern. I turned to my sister, who appeared to have forgotten about her own alimony situation, and asked, "Are you okay with the alimony payment, sis? You seemed confident earlier, but you're also paying your ex-husband, right?" She looked stunned, snapping back to reality. "Alimony? I have to pay alimony too?" she asked, clearly surprised and seemingly unaware of the earlier discussions. "You said you'd give plenty of alimony, but you didn't mean I'd have to pay it, did you?" "My salary is really low," she added. Larry and my sister exchanged bewildered glances, which almost made me burst into laughter. I had already finalized the divorce papers and alimony requests. Personally, it didn't matter much to me, but witnessing Larry and my sister in this situation was rather pitiful. As predicted, my ex-husband had moved back to his parents' home after marrying my sister, just as I had warned. However, constant quarrels between my sister and my in-laws ensued. The main cause of conflict was the lie about my sister being pregnant with Larry's child. His mother, eager for a grandchild, was furious upon learning the truth. My father-in-law, who had never approved of my sister from the start, refused to even speak to her. He covered the alimony for Larry, which was promptly settled. Witnessing the drama unfold, my sister pleaded with my father-in-law, "Dad, could you please pay my alimony too?" His response was stern and angry. "I have no reason to be called Dad by you." He was visibly upset. Seeing that nothing was going her way, my sister left my ex-husband's family home abruptly, without saying a word, and disappeared. It became clear that she had remarried my ex-husband simply to shoulder the burden of alimony, a decision that seemed incredibly foolish. My ex-husband appeared to contemplate reconciling with me, but his father admonished him, "You're not the kind of man who should even consider starting a family. You can't even take care of yourself properly." Reflecting on everything that had transpired, I knew it was for the best when Larry initially agreed to return to his parents' home. While his mother was thrilled about the prospect of a grandchild, I couldn't shake the feeling that Larry was entirely unprepared for the responsibilities of parenthood. His perpetual indifference during our marriage hadn't changed, and I doubted it ever would. Seeing my sister's shock when she realized she had to pay alimony was almost comical. Despite her initial confidence, it was clear she hadn't fully considered the financial implications. Her strained financial situation was now compounded by additional payments, and I couldn't help but wonder how she could be so naive. The negotiations for alimony and property division proceeded smoothly under the guidance of my lawyer, who ensured fairness throughout. In contrast, Larry and my sister appeared bewildered and overwhelmed by the process. They exchanged looks of surprise and confusion, revealing their lack of preparedness for the realities they were facing. Moving out of the house marked a significant milestone for me. I had already secured a new apartment and was eager to begin anew. The house, once my home, now felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Knowing it belonged to the company, leaving it behind symbolized shedding the last remnants of my life with Larry. After I moved out, the tension between my sister and my in-laws escalated. The deceit about her being pregnant with my ex-husband's child deepened a divide that couldn't be healed. My father-in-law, who had always disapproved of my sister, became even more outspoken in his disdain. He saw her as someone who had disrupted our family, and this latest deception validated his concerns. When my sister asked my father-in-law to cover her alimony, he coldly rebuffed her. "I have no reason to be called Dad by you," he declared, his anger palpable. Her hopes of a comfortable life supported by my ex-husband's family shattered, leaving her without the expected backing. Eventually, she left my ex-husband's family home abruptly, disappearing without a word. Her attempt to marry my ex-husband and secure financial stability had failed miserably, only adding to the turmoil. My ex-husband, facing the consequences, seemed to contemplate reconciling with me. However, his father intervened with stern criticism. "You're not the type of man who should consider starting a family. You can't even take care of yourself properly," he admonished, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. In the end, I moved forward from the entire ordeal. I concentrated on my work and embraced my new life, leaving behind the turmoil that had consumed my marriage. It was clear that Larry and my sister had their own paths to navigate, and I had no intention of being entangled in their drama any longer. This experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, responsibility, and the importance of making decisions that are right for oneself. I made up my mind never to reconcile with my ex-husband, even if he begged. My faith in him was shattered when he betrayed me with my sister, and his indifferent demeanor during our discussions disgusted me. He lost his executive position and now works as a temporary employee. His behavior throughout our marriage and after the affair showed me that he wasn't dependable or trustworthy. His lack of dedication to our relationship and the company proved he wasn't suited for the responsibilities he held. Seeing him now demoted from an executive to a temporary role reaffirms my decision to move forward independently. I have continued in my role as CEO, which has become paramount in my life. Leading the company gives me purpose and satisfaction. It keeps me driven and focused, and I take pride in my work every day. I strive to improve the company for the benefit of our employees and their families. Being CEO has become integral to my identity, and I cannot envision relinquishing it. After the breakup, the idea of starting a new relationship doesn't appeal to me at all. I've been through too much emotional turmoil to consider it. Right now, my priority is focusing on myself and my career. There's so much I want to achieve, and I don't want any distractions. I've kept in touch with my father-in-law, who has been a great source of support throughout everything. His experience and wisdom have been invaluable to me. Whenever I face tough decisions or need guidance, I can rely on him for insightful advice. Our relationship has grown stronger, and I truly value having him as a mentor. For the time being, I see my commitment to the company as akin to a marriage. It requires dedication, hard work, and passion. My goal is to ensure the business thrives and our employees have job security and a stable future. Their well-being is my priority, and I take my role as CEO very seriously. This journey has taught me a lot about resilience and staying true to myself. Despite the personal challenges, I've managed to steer the company on a steady path and even achieve growth. It's not always easy, but knowing that I'm making a positive impact on people's lives keeps me motivated. Ultimately, my focus remains on leading the company and supporting my team. I'm determined to build a successful future for all of us. While my personal life has had its share of ups and downs, my professional life provides stability and a sense of accomplishment. This is where I draw my strength and where I choose to channel my energy for the foreseeable future.